Hello everyone, good morning. My name is Newbery and I am the author of The Last Firefox, which you can see up in the screen or which you can see here. So this is my debut novel, my first ever book, which publishes tomorrow, but which has been sneaking into bookshops already quite naughtily. So from tomorrow, you'll be able to see this book in the bookshops and on the bookshelves, which is really, really exciting. This is my first ever event, so this is the first time that I've ever spoken to any schools or anything, so I'm really, really excited. And I'm really excited as well that The Last Firefox has been chosen as Waterstones Book of the Month for March, so that's just a dream come true. And today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about myself and my journey to becoming an author. I'm going to be telling you a little bit about what the book is about. And we're going to have some fun activities as well. So I hope you've got some pencils at the ready and that you've got your imaginations ready to go. So on the screen, you should have a photo. So I'm going to give you one guess. This is probably the easiest question that you will ever be asked. Who do you think that person in the photo is? Yeah, so that is me. That is me when I was maybe 9 years old in school with some books in the background, which is very appropriate. So I grew up in a small town called South Wales, where I still live now. I was quite a shy, timid little boy, so I wasn't very chatty. I was quite nervous. And I used to always escape into imaginary worlds. So I was always reading, I was always writing, I was always drawing, making up my own magical creatures. I was absolutely obsessed with things like Harry Potter and Pokemon, both of which, as you probably know, are full to the brim of magical creatures. So that's why I used to enjoy making up my own. So much so that when I was older, I even got a Pokeball tattooed onto my wrist because that's how much I loved Pokemon and still do. So yes, I used to be lost in my own little world all the time, always reading and getting stuck in these imaginary fictional worlds, because they were just better to me. There was unlimited possibilities. Anything could happen in these imaginary worlds. So these were my favorite books when I was younger. So you should be able to see them all on your screen now, and you might recognize some of them. So in the top left, we've got the Harry Potter books. So I don't really need to say what those are about. I'm sure you've all either read the books or seen the films, but they were my absolute favorite books in the world. And in the middle top, you've got the Goosebumps books, which were these sort of scary horror books. Very short books, very quick reads, but they were quite spooky. And then in the top right, you've got the Spiderwick Chronicles, which were about fairies, but these weren't your typical lovely, cute fairies. These were quite dark, naughty, mischievous fairies. And then on the bottom row, you've got The Spook's Apprentice by Joseph Delaney. You've got A Series of Unfortunate Events by Lemony Snicket, and you've also got The Saga of Darren Shan, starting off with Cirque du Freak. So as you can see from these books, there's a bit of a theme coming out, a bit of a pattern. They're all quite magical books. They've all got elements of fantasy and magical creatures, and some of them are a little bit scary as well. So you can really see how the sorts of books that I used to read when I was younger, and which some of you might have read too, really shaped the reader that I became and the writer that I became as I got older as well. So I quickly learned that reading was actually a pretty cool thing. You can make things, you can get lost in somebody's magical world, and you don't have to worry about the outside world at all. And I used to lose hours and hours to reading a book. And I thought one day, wow, this is really cool. How amazing is it that you can write something that people will love and that they will get totally absorbed in and not notice the time has gone by. And that was what really made me think when I was about 8 years old, wow, I want to be a writer. I want to make people fall in love with stories, and I want to make the time go really super fast so that they don't even know where the time has gone. And I want them to fall in love with characters. So that's really what made me decide to want to be a writer. So I started scribbling a lot in notebooks, writing short stories. And then one day when I was 12, I decided, right, I want to write a book. I'm going to write my first ever full book, and I'm going to get it published. It's going to be a big success. It's going to sell millions and millions of copies. It'll be turned into a film, and that's it. I can retire. That's me done. I've written my book and I'm a famous author now. So when I was 12, I wrote a book called Wish Pluck. So as you can see on the screen, it's got its own cover, which I asked my uncle, who's a very talented artist, to paint at the time. Wish Pluck was about a boy called Nathan who finds a magical harp, and which teleports him to this fantasy land. And this harp has this power that can grant you wishes. So if you pluck a string, it'll grant you a wish. But there's an evil king after the harp. So it's the job of Nathan and his friends to keep this harp a secret from this evil king and to protect it. And they get up to lots of adventures and lots of dangers on the way. So that was my first book when I was 12. And I really did think, wow, this is it. I'm going to be published. It's going to be amazing. It didn't quite work out that way for Wish Pluck, unfortunately. My friends read it and my family read it. And then unfortunately, that was really it. But it was an amazing way to get started with writing and making up stories and getting them down on paper. So as the years went by, I started entering some writing competitions. And there was this organization called Young Writers, and they used to publish anthologies. So I'm not sure if you know what an anthology is. An anthology is a book that's full of small stories. And Young Writers were asking people to submit their short stories, and they might pick them to get published in an actual book. So when I was 12, I was very, very lucky and had my first ever story published in an anthology. So that anthology was called Things That Go Bump in the Night. And my story, the one that I wrote when I was 12, is called The Black Candle. And you can see it up on your screen there. So you probably won't be able to read it right now because I'm just going to tell you what it's about. But it's about this boy who finds a black candle, and he lights the wick, and suddenly he turns into a ghost. So this is a story about a candle that can turn people into ghosts. And this was the first time that I ever saw myself in writing. I ever saw my name. You can see my name up in the corner there on the second page. And yes, that was the most magical feeling. And I thought, yes, I want this to happen again and again and again. I want to see my name in books all the time. So a year later, when I was 13, I had another story published in an anthology. So this was again through Young Writers. The book was called Telling Tales, and the story that I had published was called Like Father, Like Son. So it was about a young boy who can fly. He doesn't know where this power comes from. He just goes flying. And one day he goes out flying over Canada, and his dad soars towards him through the clouds. And it turns out that this magical power has been passed down through the generations and from family member to family member. So those were the sorts of stories that I was writing when I was growing up. As I got older, I went to college, I went to university. I met my partner, my husband, and we got married and we moved in together. And then I really started to think, wow, okay, I want to really, truly write my first book now and try to get it properly published. So you might remember earlier, I mentioned that I used to make up lots of magical creatures and fantastical animals. So I sat down one evening and I remember this animal that I'd made up when I was younger. And this animal was a fox that was covered in magical fire. And that was the Fire Fox. So that's really how the idea for The Last Fire Fox came about. You'll be able to see on the screen now the different processes that the book went through. So I wrote the book and I sent it off to an agent who sent it off to a publisher who offered me a book deal to turn it into an actual book. And I was very lucky that last year I got to go to the factory where they make the books and I got to see them actually create it with hot glue and loads of paper. And then it turned into this beautiful, sparkly, shiny book that I really hope you're all going to read and really enjoy. So that is how the idea for The Last Fire Fox came about. So you can see here the journey that I've gone on as an author, starting off with a book like Wish Pluck, and ending up with a book like The Last Firefox. So there's a lot of similarities really when you think about the covers. The big difference is that my book Wishpluck was painted by my uncle. The cover was painted by my uncle. And for The Last Firefox, I have an amazing illustrator called Laura Catalan, who you'll see some of the illustrations shortly. But she's done an amazing job of bringing the book to life. But yes, there's a lot of similarities between the covers. There's a lot of action in the middle of the cover, and there's sort of this swirly motion movement. You can see a lot of movement in the covers. And what they're about is quite similar too. So I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about what The Last Firefox is about shortly. But you'll get that sense of both books being about a young boy who's a little bit shy, a little bit scared of the world, and having to figure things out and learn to be brave. So that's really the theme that comes through both of these books. So what is The Last Firefox really about? So as I've said, Charlie, the main character in the book, is a little bit afraid of the world and everything in it. So a little bit like myself when I was his age. He's quite shy and timid and quite nervous of everything. As you'll be able to see from the illustration on the first page and the opening line of the book, which reads, "I'm being chased to my death by a goose, and it's all Lippy's fault." I don't know if any of you have ever had an encounter with a goose, a close encounter, but they are actually quite scary. They're the descendants of the dinosaurs. So, rightfully so, Charlie is quite scared of the goose in the first chapter of the book. But yes, Charlie is very shy and timid and not very brave. And then one day he accidentally becomes the guardian of this magical creature called the Last Firefox. So the Last Firefox isn't your ordinary adorable fox cub. It might look a bit similar. He's got big ears, a big bushy tail. But if you get too close, you might get your eyebrows burnt off because the firefox is covered in this magical fire fur, which is governed by the fox's mood. So if the fox is angry or scared, then he'll be really hot and you won't be able to go near him, and he can start wildfires. So you need to run away if that happens. But if he likes you and if he's happy and calm, then he'll feel all warm and lovely and tickly to the touch. So together with the help of his best friends, Lippy and Roo, Charlie has to learn to keep the last firefox, who he names Cadno, which is the Welsh word for fox. Charlie lives in Wales and he has Welsh lessons. So that's where he had the name Cadno come from. So yes, he has to keep the firefox a secret from his bullies at school, his dads, his teachers, and even this monstrous creature that's hunting down the last firefox. So you'll have to read it to find out how successful Charlie and his friends are. So I've said the word theme a few times. I don't know if anybody knows what theme means. Theme is something that when you dig a little bit deeper, you understand a little bit more about what a story is really about. So you could say The Last Firefox is about a young boy called Charlie who becomes the guardian of this magical creature called the firefox. But really, it's about friendship. So with the help of his best friends, Lippy and Roo, the three of them manage to work together as a team to keep the last firefox safe from this deadly predator that's hunting it. So you could say it's about friendship and working together as a team. You could also say it's about courage and finding your inner fire, which is actually something that's on the cover, if you can see there, find your inner fire. It's a big theme in the book, is bravery and standing up for yourself and having courage. And at the beginning of the book, Charlie doesn't have any inner fire. He borrows a lot of fire from Lippy and Roo, who have their own inner fires. They're both quite brave people. But Charlie is lacking that spark. So thanks to his friends and the adventures that they go on and standing up for his family, he starts to discover his own inner fire. So that spark really lights up and his inner fire in his heart and in his soul catches a light. You could also say that the book is about animal companionship. So I'm sure there's lots of animal lovers out there. I myself am a huge animal lover. I've got a dog called Buzz who's sitting downstairs right now. I didn't want to leave him come up here because he would just lick me the entire time, and I didn't want you to hear that slobbery, horrible noise in the background. So I've got a dog called Buzz, who unfortunately isn't quite as cool as a firefox, but he is just as mischievous. And I'm sure you've all got pets as well. So this book is largely about looking after animals and being friendly to animals, and yeah, just looking after these amazing creatures that we share our planet with. And lastly, you could also say that the book is about family. So you might have noticed that Charlie has 2 dads, which isn't the most usual family setup, but this book is about normalizing it. So making families with 2 dads or 2 mums or any family that might be a little bit different, just make them normal. And it's about standing up for your family and sticking together as well. So I know lots of you might recognize what's on the screen right now, but any guesses what this could be? I know a lot of you are probably shouting, it's a Pokemon card! And you would be completely right. So this is a Pokemon card, and this is part of the inspiration behind The Last Firefox and where the idea came from. When I was younger, I was absolutely obsessed with Pokemon. So I played all the games on the Game Boy. I know that you play them on the Nintendo Switch now, and I have one of those as well. I collected all the Pokemon trading cards. I think one day I sat down and I counted through all the cards, and it took me all day, and I had around 3,000 cards, which took me a long time to collect. Yes, and I watched all the TV shows, so I was a true Pokemon fan and still am to this day. But on the other side of this card is my favorite Pokemon. So I'm going to ask you all now. I'm sure you've all got your favorite Pokemons if you're a Pokemon fan. I'm going to ask you now, what do you think the Pokemon on the other side of this card could be? And just a hint, he's not a cool Pokemon. He's not one of the impressive ones, so it's not what you might think. So what do you think my favorite Pokemon could be? Dun, da, da, da. My favorite Pokemon is Psyduck. So, told you, he's not a cool Pokemon at all. He's not got these amazing powers or anything. In fact, he's a little bit like me and Charlie, I suppose. Maybe that's why I like him so much. He's quite shy, quite scared, a little bit anxious. He's always got a bit of a headache, so he's quite stressed. But the cool thing about Psyduck is that he evolves into Golduck, which is this laser beam shooting ninja duck, which is really powerful. And I think that's why I love Psyduck so much, is that he reminds me of Charlie. He reminds me of Nathan, the character from Wishbluck. He reminds me of myself when I was younger. I was such a shy child, and I'm sure some of you out there might think that you're a little bit shy and that you can't do these big, exciting things. But you definitely can, because look at me. This is what I never thought I'd actually be able to write a book and get it published and be talking to all you wonderful people about it. So yes, it's all about finding that inner fire. And that's why I like Psyduck so much, even though he's a water Pokemon. So I imagined then what Cadnor the Firefox would look like if he had his own Pokemon trading card. So you'll be able to see on your screens now, this is a Pokemon card for the Firefox. So this is what I imagined it would look like. So you've got the name Firefox at the top. You've got an illustration of him as well. So I'm not going to tell you what he's getting up to in that photo, but he is being very, very naughty. And he is setting fire to something. And you've also got his attacks there at the bottom as well. So you've got Tail Whip. He's got this big bushy tail, which he can use to set things on fire, which is quite naughty. And he's also got Fireball, which is more of a defensive move, which he does when he might be a bit angry or a bit scared. He can curl up into a ball and erupt into this big explosion of fire. So if that happens, you really want to run away because it can be quite dangerous. So that's what I imagined a Cadnor the Firefox Pokemon card to look like. But now it's your turn. So as you can tell from the title of the book, The Last Firefox, Cadnor is the very last of his kind. There are no more Firefoxes. He's the only one left. And you'll find out why if and when you read the book. So you can understand that at some times, Cadnor might start feeling a little bit lonely. So I really would like your help to come up with another new magical creature that can keep Cadnor company and be his friend. So I hope you've all been given this template of a trading card. And we're going to create our little own magical creature today. And I really hope it starts to get your imagination whirring and you come up with all these ideas yourself. So start doodling, start scribbling. There's lots of different things to think about. We're going to do a little activity in a second where we make our own creature that I hope will inspire you all. But start thinking about things like, get my notes, things like type of Pokemon. Is it a fire Pokemon? Or magical creature, I should say, not Pokemon. Is it a magical fiery creature? Is it a water creature? Is it an electricity creature? Or, a flying creature? There's so many different types of creature that it could be. You need to think of a name for the creature as well. And think of a drawing. What does the creature look like? And as well as that, what attacks does it have? Or what defensive moves does it have? So like Tail Whip and Fire Blast rather, with the Firefox. And thinking as well about a little biography for the animal, so a little description. So where does it live? What sort of personality does it have? And you can start to fill in your own trading card to come up with your own magical creature. So I think you've all got the template in front of you now. If not, I'll make sure that your teachers get a sheet that you can all fill in. But what I'd really like is for you to start thinking about a magical creature. And I think the best way to start doing that is to think of an ordinary animal that we have here in the planet with us today and to give it a magical power. So we're going to do an activity in a second. But what would be really cool is if your teachers could take photos of the creatures that you all come up with and share them with me on social media and on Twitter, so that I can see the amazing animals that you come up with. And then you never know, maybe one day that animal will feature in one of your own stories or in your own book. Or maybe it will even inspire me and I'll ask you, can I use this animal in one of my stories? So get scribbling, get imagining. But what we're going to do now is we're going to have a bit of fun coming up with our own magical creature. So I've got 3 boxes here. There's 1, 2, 3. They've all got different things inside them. So this box here has different types of animals inside. So I'm going to reach into this one first in a second. This box here has different types of magical powers and super abilities inside that you can use to give your animal. And this one here has different personality types. So we can use that to start forming the personality of the animal, okay? So first things first, I'm going to reach into the animal box and pull out the animal that we're going to be basing our creature on, okay? So I'm just going to open it up. With the shake. Ooh, that's a good one. Right, so the animal that we're going to be basing our magical creature on, I don't know if you can see, is the wolf. I know it says wolf backwards, but it's going to be based on the idea of a wolf animal, okay? So that's the animal that we're starting off with. So you can feel free to start scribbling your own wolf or to make up your own magical creature as we go along. Next, I'm going to be reaching into this box. Oh, the stickers are starting to fall off. Next, I'm going to be reaching into this box, which is full of magical abilities, and we're going to see what magical thing this wolf creature can do. So let me just open it. Stickers are still falling off. Right, so, ooh, that's another good one. This magical ability is that it can freeze things. So it's got control of ice and snow. So already we've sort of got a name for this animal. So, you know, I've got the firefox as the animal of my book, but this is like an ice wolf or a snow wolf. Maybe it can breathe. When it breathes, it can freeze things with its breath, or maybe when it howls, it can make snowstorms. So that's a really cool one. And then last but not least, we've got the personality box, which we're going to use to start making the wolf's personality. So what's the wolf really like? So if I reach in here, hang on, and give them a shake. Right, so We all love emojis. We use emojis in our phones every day. So this emoji here is to describe what the wolf's personality is going to be like. So as you can see, it's like a detective emoji. It's got a little magnifying glass. So you could say that our snow wolf is very curious and very smart and likes finding things out, which is really good for a wolf to have, I think, because they have to prowl quietly through the woods. So you could start making up a story for this wolf, this snow wolf that can breathe frost or howl and make it snow. So you can start making up a little story about how the snow wolf might live in the mountains and how he creeps around really slowly. So those are the three ones that I've drawn today. You've got the wolf that can freeze things, and it's a very curious detective wolf. So I think those are three really cool ones. But as I said earlier, I think it'd be really awesome if you could all start to make up your own magical creatures and sharing those with me. So, as I've been saying, Pokemon and magical creatures have been a big inspiration behind the book. But there is also one more true inspiration, the real inspiration behind the book and why I wrote it. And that is my family. So you'll be able to see up on the screen now. This is a photo of myself and my family. So there's me in the middle, my husband Tom, our little boy, and there's Buzz, the half pug, looking a bit annoyed that he has to take a photo with us. So yes, this is the real reason why I wrote the book. We are a family that was brought together by something called adoption. Now, does anybody out there know what adoption is? Adoption is quite a big subject. So I'll tell you a little bit about what that is now. So adoption is something that happens when a birth mum and a birth dad might not be able to look after their baby. So maybe they're not very well, or maybe they haven't got the skills to look after a baby very well. And for that reason, that baby then has to have another family found for them who can provide the love and safety that that baby needs. So that's called adoption. And myself and my husband, we adopted our little boy around 3 years ago. But before that, when we were just going through the process of becoming a family, of going through the adoption process, I was having a look around to see if there were any books out there where the main character is adopted and has two dads or two mums. And I couldn't really find any. So I thought, okay, that's not right. And I made it my mission to write a book where the main character has two dads and is adopted. And I wanted it to just be a fantasy, a magical fantasy adventure where the character just has two dads. You know, that's all it is. So that's why I wrote the book. I really want our little boy to grow up seeing himself in the books that he reads, to read books and think, oh, there's a family that looks like mine. Because everybody deserves that. It doesn't matter if you've got two dads, two mums, a mum and a dad, if you live with your grandparents or with a different family member or a foster family. There are so many different ways that you can be a family and that a family can come together. And they are all absolutely the right way for a family to exist. There's no wrong way for a family to exist, as long as there's love and there's safety. So that's really why I wrote this book, for our little boy and for all the other people out there to see that families like this exist and that that's okay. So as you can see here, there's an illustration of Charlie with his two dads, and you might think they look a little bit familiar. I was very lucky that the artist, Laura Catalan, the illustrator of the book, asked if I wanted Charlie's dads to be similar in appearance to myself and my husband. And of course I had to say yes. So there we are. And yes, so there are a million ways to make a family. All you need is love. So that's really what this book is about. And that's the driving force behind The Last Firefox. You know, you could say it's about the boy who becomes the guardian of this magical creature, but really it's about all the different ways that a family can exist. Right then, so I'm now going to do one last little final game before we move on to a small reading and questions. So the game is based around the idea of Welsh animal names. So as I said earlier, Cadno is named after the Welsh word for fox, And on the next slide, I've got a load of different animal names in Welsh that I want you all to try and have a go at pronouncing and saying out loud, and also guessing what that animal means. So if you're a school from Wales, I do apologise. This game might be a little bit easy for you, but please get stuck in and try to say them and try to translate what you think that animal word means. If you might know them all already. But to other schools, have some fun trying to say these words and guessing what the animal is. So we'll start first with the one at the top. Have a go at trying to pronounce that one, the one that starts with the letter P. So you pronounce that pili pala, and that is the Welsh word for, any guesses? That is the Welsh word for butterfly. And then next we've got the second one, which I almost said out loud myself then, so that would have spoiled the whole thing. So have a go at pronouncing the second one, the one that starts with the letter G. So you pronounce that gwdihu, and that is the Welsh word for owl. The next one is a lot harder, so have a go at pronouncing those three words, but it's a name for one animal, but it's made up of three Welsh words. So good luck with that one. So you pronounce that buwch goch gota, and that translates to ladybird or ladybug. But really, what it actually means is spotty red cow. So I'm not sure why they named it after spotty red cow, but it actually means that it's just the name given to ladybird in Welsh. The next one is perhaps my favourite. So have a go at saying the fourth one down. Again, it starts with the letter B. So the way you pronounce that is bwchdew, and that means hamster. But if you cut the word in two, bwch and dew, it actually translates to fat cheeks. So if you imagine a hamster in your head's stuffing food into its mouth and its cheeks go really fat. So I think that's a really, really good name for a hamster. The next one, I'll give you a clue. The first letter, this is the last word, the first letter is the letter ll, which only exists in the Welsh language. So have a go at pronouncing that and guess what you think it might be about, what animal that might be. Okay, great. So that is pronounced llwynog, and that animal is the fox. So in Welsh, there are lots of different words that mean the same thing, and the word fox in Welsh has two different words, both cadno and llwynog. So that's the end of that game. Before we move on to questions, I'm just going to do a short reading from the book. So this is chapter 5, which is the page where Charlie first lays eyes on the last firefox for the first ever time. So I'm just going to do a very quick reading before we move on to questions. For a second, I think I must have bumped my head, because when I look up from the ground, there's a boy standing over me, dressed in these weird clothes. Weirder still, he's carrying an orange puppy. Definitely must have bumped my head. I try to blink him away, but he doesn't fade. Then he starts talking, and I start to suspect he's not a side effect of my bumped head after all. He's wearing a brown fur coat that rises and falls rapidly on his shoulders as he pants. He's been running. He keeps glancing over his shoulder towards the ivy, as if he's worried about being followed. Who are you? I ask, clambering to my feet. Nobody, he insists. He glances at the puppy in his arms, then looks me up and down. You're a bit small, but you'll have to do. Here, hold him. And just like that, I have a puppy in my arms. It's a chubby little thing, all big ears and cheese puff orange fur, which is strangely warm. It's like hugging a hot water bottle. And that's when I realised this puppy has a long, bushy tail and two pointy ears. In fact, there's something decidedly unpuppyish about it. It's a fox! I exclaim, holding it back out to nobody. The cub dangles between us and lets out a little whine. Hey, I don't want it. Nobody stands up straight, his expression severe. It's a he. His name is Firetail, and don't hold him like that. Keep him close to you. I stare dumbly down at the cub before clutching him to my chest, so that his heart beats rapidly against mine. Why is he called Firetail? I'm cut off by a piercing howl. It turns the air cold and makes the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end, and it's coming from behind the ivy. Now that I'm looking closely, I can see fragments of darkness through the greenery. There's no wall there at all. It's a doorway. The stranger's eyes widen in fear. You're about to find out. Put him down. Hurry! I frown and lower the cub to the ground, and through the ivy the howling stops abruptly. The cub's hackles rise, a growl rumbling in his belly. Then, unbelievably, his fur starts shimmering. He glows, brighter and brighter, and I feel a prickle of heat on my skin. It's almost like he's on. Get back, the boy shouts, shielding his face, but it's too late. The cub erupts on the spot, an orb of angry fire bursting from his body. I leap back, the flames so bright that I can barely look at them. After a few seconds, I peer through my fingers. The flames have mostly died down, and there's a cub still standing in a ball of orange fire, completely unscathed and snarling at the ivy. I can't believe what I'm seeing. Maybe I did bump my head. And there's an illustration there of Charlie and the boy who brings the last firefox through the portal, and there's the firefox himself. So thank you for listening to that. I'm just going to move on to some questions now before we finish. So I've been sent quite a lot of lovely questions, so I'm just going to work through a few of them now. How much, this is from Orsett Primary in Essex. I hope I said the name right. How much of your outdoors lifestyle inspired this book? So that's actually a really good question. I'm very, very outdoorsy, which you wouldn't have thought when I was younger because I was so obsessed with games and books and reading, and I still am, but I love going outdoors now. And being in Wales, we're surrounded by castles. You know, the closest castle to us is only about 10 minutes down the road, and you can drive pretty much in any direction, and within half an hour you'll get to a new castle. So that really helped to inspire the book. There's a castle in the book, which is where Charlie bumps into the firefox for the first time, and where a lot of the big, action scenes take place. So that really helped to inspire the book. And that also links into another question from the same school, which is how important are your Welsh roots when writing a story? So apart from the landscape and the castles inspiring the story, it was also about the language. So I really wanted to use some Welsh words. So you've got the name of the town that Charlie lives in, which is Bryn Castell. And you've also got the word Cadno, which, as you know, is Welsh for fox. So that really did play a part in the book and in forming my ideas around the story. I'm just going to look at my phone because there was another question about being Welsh. I think that, sure, I saw another question about being Welsh. No, I'm mistaken. It must have been the same question. But other than that as well, when I was growing up, I didn't really see a lot of Welsh famous people, a lot of Welsh authors or anything like that. And I didn't really think that there was much room for somebody like me in publishing and in books. I thought that writing books might be for people with posh accents and who say big words and that sort of thing. And that's not me. I don't know a lot of big words. And I haven't got a posh accent, as you can tell. And that's totally okay. There's still room for me in this publishing industry and in the book world and the world of writing and publishing books. And there's room for all of you guys too, if that's what you want to do, or in any other area that you might be interested in. So yes, being Welsh was a massive part of writing the book. Townhead Primary School, Coatbridge. Did you enjoy writing at school? Yes, I absolutely did. So I always ask children what their favourite lessons are. And if they say art or English, then I'm always like, yes, those are my favourite lessons too. And I especially loved writing stories. And I'll never forget in year 6, I wrote a story and my teacher read it out because she loved it so much. She read it out to the class and she put it on the wall. And I'll always remember that because it was one of those times where I first felt acknowledged that somebody had acknowledged my writing and had liked it. And I had such a thrill from that. So yes, I definitely did like writing at school. Winchborough Primary School. Again, I'm sorry if I say the name of the school incorrectly. Why did you want to become an author? So I touched on that in the presentation, but I really wanted to become an author because I loved the idea of people reading my books and falling in love with the worlds that I create and losing that sense of time. It is all about getting people to fall in love with my books, because I love that feeling so much of starting a new book and being totally obsessed with it. I can't put this book down. I just want to read it all the time. I want to stay up late. I don't want to go to bed. I just want to read this book. And I think that's one of the best feelings in the world. So that's, that's one of the main reasons why I decided to become an author. So I'm just going to look at my phone again so that I can find some more questions. So St. Mary's in Twickenham. How long did it take you to write your story, and where did you find your inspiration? So I've already answered that a little bit about the inspiration and why I wrote the book and what inspired it. But how long did it take me to write the story? That's a really good question. I think a lot of people think with books that you write a book and then that's it. You send it off to a publisher and it gets published and it's on the shelf next week. And it doesn't quite work like that. So I started writing the book about 4 or 5 years ago. I started writing The Last Firefox. And it probably took me about 4 months to write the first draft. So the first draft is when you just get all the story down. It might be very messy. It might not all be right or exactly like you want it. It's a bit like a sketch when you're doing a drawing. It's a bit like sketching out what you're going to draw. And then you start adding things. You might do the lines a bit firmer. You might rub bits out and change it a little bit. You might colour it in. And those in writing are called different drafts. So I took about 1.5 years to maybe get the book to where I wanted it to be. And then I sent it off to an agent and then to a publisher. And about 2 years ago, I got a very exciting phone call from Puffin to offer a book deal. And then it took 2 years to publish the book. So it's probably taken, about 5 years altogether, the journey from writing the first word to this book being published tomorrow. So just going to look at my phone again to find some more questions. What is your favourite book character that you've created? That, I think, again, is from St. Mary's in Twickenham. Wow, okay. So Firefox isn't the first book that I've written. It's not the only book that I've written. I've got another book coming out next year, which I don't think I'm allowed to talk about very much, but there's a character in that book. I'll give you their name. Their name is Alistair, and they are my favourite character that I've ever created. Closely followed probably by Lippy in The Last Firefox. When you get around to reading it, I hope you'll understand, because Lippy is amazing, and I hope you all love her, and that you love all the other characters as well. But Lippy is a true firecracker. So just reading again. When you were at school, did you ever struggle for ideas when writing? And if so, did anything help? So who would you dress up as for World Book Day? I always had a lot of ideas. And even now, I'm constantly thinking of new ideas and new stories. So I don't really struggle with that. But what I will say is that ideas can come from everywhere and anywhere. So sometimes it can be something I might see in the newspaper, or a photo or a painting that I might see and thinking, oh, okay, what's happening in this photo? What could the story be about? So that's where I get a lot of my ideas from. And also, I think an important part of coming up with ideas is to read and absorb other people's ideas. So make sure that you're reading lots of books, watching films, playing games. I know we don't like to say to play too many games, but there are stories in games that will inspire you. And what would I dress up as for World Book Day? Oh, that's a hard one. I'm not sure what I dress up as for World Book Day. I'd probably dress up as a firefox somehow. I don't think I'd be allowed to have fire in the same way that the firefox does, because that could be quite dangerous. But it would be really cool to see other people dress up as the characters from The Last Firefox for World Book Day soon as well. I think I've got another few questions there. Who is your favourite Harry Potter character and why? And that's from Oak Hill Academy, West London. Okay, so I think my favourite my favourite Harry Potter character is probably Luna Lovegood, just because she's so lost in her own world and she's so magical, and yeah, she's just very dreamy, and I love that about her. So I think, yes, my favourite character is Luna. So thank you very much for all the questions. It's been amazing talking to you all, and I hope to see some of your magical creatures soon. Please send them to me. Have a wonderful World Book Day tomorrow, and I hope that you all enjoy dressing up and reading lots of books and enjoy making up stories. Thank you very much.